Why any country? Why Brazil? Why America? Why our neighborhood? Because every place needs to continually hear the gospel.
Their circumstances are different. Their needs are different. And they're experiencing things that you and I will never experience and never have.
When I saw the woman carrying the yoke over her shoulders with the 2 pails of water, I thought, wow, I didn't realize that people still actually live like that.
We were able just to see the beauty of the countryside and to meet the people and find out that they are indeed a warm and beautiful people.
The first time we went, one of the ladies of the head of the orphanage came to Christ, the head of that orphanage and her assistant. The next year that we went back, this orphanage that had been gray and dingy and dirty, paint peeling off the wall the year before, had been freshly painted. They had made a great playroom area, and it was all done with them putting aside their money to make sure these children were cared for.
I would say, if you have a passion to reach souls, it's a harvest. Go.
The Belarusian mission is committed to taking the gospel of Jesus Christ to the Belarusian people. And they do it at great cost, at great sacrifice.
They understand what suffering is. We in America, if we have to suffer, we think something's wrong, and we back off. It just fuels their faith.
It made me appreciate what we have here in America to work with. But it made me long for the days when people would weep when they came to Christ. And when we would see tears in a church, we don't see many tears anymore.
They're a country that is desperate for the gospel. They hunger for the gospel. And to see the difference between those that know Christ and those that don't, you really see the difference just in their demeanor and in their facial expressions, those that have the joy of the Lord.
To see the difference that Christ makes in a heart and the impact that it has on a social level, you can't buy that, but you can invest in it by going.
We went to a shelter that had abused children, and I was able to share the gospel with these 10 children. And I used a gospel glove to share Christ with them. And at that moment when they all 10 prayed to receive Christ, I knew that that's why I went to Belarus.
There's something about just, you know, as Americans coming in, we were allowed to go into the public schools and preach the gospel. You can't do that in the United States of America, but Americans can go to these schools and preach the gospel.
And it was just, it's so exciting, the doors that were open and the freedom that we had to speak about the blood of Jesus and His atonement.
It wasn't just me going, it was my family going, it was my friends going, it was my church backing me, it was my husband. I mean, if my husband wouldn't have stayed with my kids, I wouldn't have been able to go. And so it's a sacrifice, but Christ sacrificed everything for us. And to go on a 10-day mission trip or a 5-day mission trip is nothing compared to what He did for us.
Andrew and Ina Rishkoff's commitment to do whatever it takes to spread the gospel is admirable, and it's a venture worth investing your prayers, your time, and your resources.
They handled their finances extremely well. The finances of the mission are wide open, and I've never been concerned about giving money there that it might not be spent well.
If you walk through the desert and you're very thirsty and suddenly you found a fountain, would you hide it from other people? Of course not. People in former USSR, they are desperate for the good news, and so many of my friends, they never heard this news, and they will go to hell unless they hear it from someone like you. I encourage you strongly, please, would you join this mission and go to former USSR?
I found myself basically in love with the people of Belarus and the pastors, the opportunities that are there. I've been on mission trips before, never with this type of results, never with the responsiveness that we saw among the Belarusian people.
God is not a God to just one nation. He's a God to all nations, and He tells us to go and reach all people and every nation, every tribe.
When the tide comes in, there are all kinds of seashells that come in. Of course, they're living beings, and they get stranded on the beach, and they die if they don't get back in the water. Well, this man was going along, picking up the seashells and putting them back in the water. And somebody came and said, you know, why are you doing that? There are so many seashells out there that there's no way you can make a dent in saving seashells. And he picked another one up, threw it back in the water, and said, I made a difference in that one.
For the people that are sitting in the pew, not knowing if they can go, you can go, you can pray. If you've been forgiven, then we need to show forgiveness. And if we've been saved, then we need to show our saving God to others.
We was at a collective farm, and I was sitting with some little boys, and there was naturally the language barrier. The invitation was given, and everyone that wanted to receive Christ was supposed to raise their hand. Well, I didn't raise my hand. Well, they didn't understand that I had already accepted Christ, so they grabbed my hand, and well, okay, so I raised my hand just to appease them, I guess, the best way, and then they went forward when the invitation was given for them to accept Christ. And I stood in the background, and one of the little boys came back and grabbed my hand and led me forward.
You knew it was important.
Yeah, well, as like Andrew telling Peter. You know, he had to go tell about Jesus right away to his brother, and that young man, at the instance that he was saved, he understood evangelism. He wanted me to come forward too to accept Christ. And that's just, I mean, that's just so pure.
We need your help, and we need it now. The doors might be closing, so it's quite an urgency. Come and help us with your prayers, with your financial support. Just bring your good hearts and come here.
And I believe that Belarus is one of the great mission fields of the world. We don't know how long it will be open, but I think it would be very wise of pastors to consider the possibility of involving their church in Belarus missions.
Go on a mission trip, but definitely go to Belarus, because Belarus can change your life.
I remember some years ago, a young man kept asking our American missionaries, "Why did you come? What's the purpose of your crossing the ocean?" And he was shocked with the answer, "Just to tell you about God's love." And indeed, it is the matter of life and death. And the sacrifice truly convinces people how important the message is.
Time is the enemy for the unsaved. There is a golden hour for evangelism in Belarus. For a large majority of people, if they do not respond to the gospel at a young age, they likely will not do so later in life. That's why we ask you to go.
Won't you join us?
Please come to Belarus.
Please come
to Belarus.
Please come.
Please, Belarus.
Please come to Belarus.
Please come.
Come.
Come to Belarus.
Пожалуйста, приезжайте в Беларусь.